In March 2001, Leeds United fans stood in the Santiago Bernabéu, Real Madrid's stadium, watching their team take one of the greatest clubs in football history to the very limit in a Champions League semifinal. Rio Ferdinand, Mark Viduka, Harry Kewell, Alan Smith, Lee Bowyer, Jonathan Woodgate, a squad that cost over £100 million to assemble, built to conquer Europe. 3 years later, that same club was relegated from the Premier League, drowning in debt, selling players for whatever they could get. 3 years after that, League One, England's third division, the club that had stood in the Bernabéu, now playing against teams most football fans have never heard of. And the man responsible for it all? He sat in his office, surrounded by exotic fish in an expensive aquarium that he had charged to the club. This is the story of Leeds United, the most spectacular self-destruction in English football history. To understand how far Leeds fell, you first have to understand how high they stood. Leeds United have one of the proudest histories in English football. Under Don Revie in the 1960s and 70s, they were the most feared team in England. 2 First Division titles, an FA Cup, a League Cup, 2 Fairs Cup victories in Europe. The players Revie built, Bremner, Giles, Hunter, Clark, Gray, were warriors, relentless, ruthless. The club was feared across Europe, and Elland Road, their stadium in West Yorkshire, was one of the most intimidating grounds in England. When you played Leeds, you knew you were in for a battle. That identity never left the club. Even through the difficult years of the 1980s, even through relegation to the second division, Leeds fans never stopped believing their club belonged at the top. And in 1992, the final season before the Premier League began, Leeds United won the First Division title, the last champions of the old Football League. Their manager, Howard Wilkinson, had built a side of grit and quality. With Eric Cantona briefly lighting up Elland Road before his move to Manchester United, Leeds were back. For a few years, they competed. Then the 1990s settled into a familiar pattern. Manchester United dominated. Arsenal emerged under Wenger. Chelsea began their rise. Leeds, despite their history, were falling behind. They needed something dramatic. They needed a gamble. In 1998, Peter Ridsdale became chairman of Leeds United. He was enthusiastic, ambitious, a businessman who genuinely loved the club. And he arrived with a vision. Leeds United would compete with the very best in England and Europe, whatever it took. Manager David O'Leary shared that vision. Together, they began spending. Not modestly, not carefully, spectacularly. Rio Ferdinand signed from West Ham for £18 million, a British transfer record. Robbie Keane, Olivier Dacour, Mark Viduka from Celtic, Lee Bowyer, Jonathan Woodgate, Harry Kewell, Danny Mills, player after player, fee after fee. But here was the detail that would eventually destroy everything. Leeds United didn't have the money, not really. Ridsdale and the board had structured the spending around a financial model called securitization, essentially borrowing against future income that hadn't arrived yet. Future Champions League revenue, future television deals, future commercial income. It was a bet, a massive all-in bet, that Leeds United would consistently qualify for the Champions League. And for a while, it looked like the bet was going to pay off, because on the pitch, Leeds were extraordinary. The 2000 to 2001 Champions League season was when Leeds United announced themselves to the whole of Europe. In the group stage, they defeated AC Milan, they defeated Lazio, they defeated Besiktas. In the second group stage, they defeated Real Madrid at Elland Road, 1-0. Real Madrid, Zidane, Figo, Raul, Roberto Carlos, beaten at Elland Road by Leeds United. The football world took notice. Then came the semi-final, Valencia, the best team in Europe that year. First leg at Elland Road, Leeds lost 0-0. Second leg at the Mestalla in Valencia, Leeds lost 3-0, out. But they had reached the Champions League semi-final, with a squad of young British players, a manager who believed in them, and a chairman who had bet everything on their success. In the Bernabéu, Leeds fans had stood and dreamed of what this club could become. What nobody told them was that the bill was already arriving. Because finishing in the Champions League semi-finals is not the same as winning it. The money Ridsdale had borrowed was structured around qualifying every season, not reaching the semi-final once, qualifying every season. That summer, Leeds needed to qualify again. They didn't. They finished 5th in the Premier League, one place outside the Champions League spots, and the financial house of cards began to shake. What followed was one of the most painful public collapses in English football history. In the summer of 2001, with the Champions League money gone, Ridsdale kept spending. Robbie Fowler, Seth Johnson, £28 million combined, on players Leeds didn't need, because stopping would mean admitting the dream was over, and Ridsdale couldn't admit that. Later, the story emerged about Seth Johnson's contract. Johnson's agent had gone to Leeds expecting to be offered £5,000 a week. He was offered £35,000. The agent, shocked, asked if they were sure. They said yes, and Leeds United paid £35,000 a week to a player who wasn't worth half that. Meanwhile, Ridsdale was charging expenses to the club that would later become infamous. Fish, tropical fish for his office aquarium, charged to Leeds United. The club that was drowning in debt was paying for its chairman's fish. On the pitch, things were getting worse. The Bowyer and Woodgate court case, 2 players accused of a violent assault, hung over the club for 2 years. Training was disrupted, focus was lost. The dressing room was divided. David O'Leary, the manager who had built the dream, wrote a book about it. Ridsdale felt betrayed. O'Leary was sacked. Terry Venables came in. It made no difference. The players were being sold as fast as they could find buyers. Ferdinand to Manchester United, £30 million. Robbie Keane to Tottenham. Lee Bowyer to West Ham. The squad that had stood in the Bernabéu was being dismantled piece by piece. May 2004. The final day of the Premier League season. Leeds United needed a result to stay up. They had sold their best players, changed their manager multiple times, were drowning in £82 million of debt. They lost. After 14 consecutive seasons in the top flight, Leeds United were relegated. The players on the pitch wept. Alan Smith, who had come through the academy, who had scored the goal against Milan, was inconsolable. He was sold to Manchester United. The fans who had adored him never forgave him for it. But the truth was, Leeds needed the money. They needed every penny they could get, because the debt wasn't going away. In 2007, 3 years after Premier League relegation, Leeds were relegated again, this time to League One, England's 3rd tier, with a 15-point deduction for entering administration. The club that had beaten Real Madrid, the club that had stood in the Bernabéu, minus 15 points, League One. Peter Ridsdale, who had long since left the club, gave an interview. "Should we have spent so heavily in the past? Probably not," he said, "but we lived the dream. We enjoyed the dream." Leeds United fans, watching their club play in the 3rd division of English football, did not feel like they had enjoyed the dream. They felt like they were living a nightmare. The road back for Leeds United was long, painfully, agonizingly long, years in the championship, manager after manager, owner after owner. Then, in 2018, Marcelo Bielsa arrived, an Argentine coaching genius, obsessive, brilliant, relentless. He transformed Leeds United in 2 years. In 2020, 16 years after relegation, Leeds United returned to the Premier League. Elland Road erupted. The city of Leeds erupted. Bielsa stood on the touchline, as he always did on his upturned bucket, and barely celebrated. Because Bielsa knew, this was just the beginning of the journey back. Leeds spent 3 seasons in the Premier League, before relegation again in 2023. The scars of Ridsdale's era run so deep through the club that even 16 years of recovery couldn't fully heal them. But the fans are still there. Elland Road still sells out. The passion that made Leeds United feared across Europe in the 1960s and 70s still burns in West Yorkshire. Because you can take a club's money. You can take their players. You can take their Premier League status. You cannot take their identity. Leeds United, for all their pain, for all the disasters of the Ridsdale era, are still Leeds United. Proud, defiant, unbroken. And somewhere, a new generation of fans is growing up who only know the stories of the Bernabéu from YouTube videos and old footage. Their job is to write new ones. This was the story football never fully told you. Subscribe. There are more stories where this came from.